Pasuk Chafei, Moshe is explaining to the Klal Yisrael how he had supplicated Hashem to go into the land, and he had said to Hashem, "Ebronov Ersa Oretz, please allow me to cross over and see the land, Tovah, Hashem Ever Yarden, which is on the other side of the Jordan, Hora Tov Hazer Balavono." The good mountain, Rashi says, what is the mountain? We know that Yerushalayim is the mountain, is the highest location. Lavavono. Lavano is the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara tells us, why is the Beis HaMikdash called Lavano? The root of the word Lavano is Lavan. Lavan is white, because it whitens the sins of the Jewish people. That's why the Beis HaMikdash is called Lavano. It cleanses the sins of the Jewish people. Sin is always represented by red, and white is always, like we say, lily white. White is always purity. So over here, there's an interesting Sepharno. He says, he asked Hashem, Ebronov era, allow me to cross and see. So the Sepharno says over here, Erono, why do I want to cross over? To destroy all the inhabitants of Canaan. Very interesting. Because if Moshe goes and removes the nations of Canaan, the Jews will never be exiled from the land. That's why he wants to be the one to remove them. Yoshua, the conquest is not the same value. There's always some remnant traces of those nations. But if I go, I will remove them, never to return. So as a result, the Jews will never be exiled. The Eretz Oretz Tovah, I want to first cross over, and in addition, I want to see the land. Etin ein nei bo l'Tovah. I want to put my eye in every part of the land, because Moshe Rabbeinu had one of a kind of Ayin Tovah. He had a good eye, because if my eye goes upon that land, the bracha is one of a kind. The Jews will always be beneficiaries of my Ayin Tovah. So two reasons. I want to cross to conquer the nations, to remove them in a way the Jews will never be exiled. In addition, I want to see the land, because my Ayin Tovah will provide a bracha, which there's nothing compared to that bracha, because Moshe Rabbeinu had one of a kind of Ayin Tovah. Okay, it's interesting. In the Psukim Zimra, we say in Vayevorach David, it concludes, At tohu Hashem Elokim, asher b'chata b'Avrom. You are the God who chose Avram. V'otzeisa mi'ul Kasdim. You took him out of the kiln of Kasdim, v'samta shmo Avraham, and you placed his name to be Avram. Before he went to the kiln, he was Avram. What does that mean? Firstly, when he came out of the kiln, his name wasn't changed immediately. His name was only changed to Avram when he was 99 years old, right before he was able to father Yitzchak. So what does it mean? Avram, Ur Kasdim. You took him out of Ur Kasdim, the kiln of Kasdim. What does this mean exactly? So the way we explained it was this. Avram, initially his name was Avram. When he had the name change, Hashem added the letter Hey to his name. Why did Hashem add the letter Hey to his name? So we explained, I mentioned the Yalkut, the Medrash, that Hashem had said that just as to create the world, the Hey was needed, because the spirituality that lies in the Hey created the physical world. For you to be able to have a child who's going to be the future patriarch of the Jewish people, what it takes, I have to recreate you to be the equivalent of all creation. That's the reason why Hashem chose the letter Hey to be added to Avram's name, because Hey is Bria, is creation within the physical realm. That's the Hey. So we explained, why did Avram have to be a new creation? to be able to father Yitzchak. For what reason? That's firstly. And hey, as Rashi says, before Avram, the numerical value of Avram was 243. When he was circumcised, the numerical value of Avraham is Ramach. Ramach corresponds to the 248 mitzvos, positive commandments, and the totality of his being. The totality of his being, he had full control. His physicality took on a spiritual dimension. That was due to the hay that was added to his name. But why did he need that? Why did he have to be the equivalent of a new creation? So we explained was that when Adam Rishon ate of the Eitz Hadas, what happened? Since Adam Rishon was the center and the purpose of all existence, and everything existed at that level to accommodate him. So when he became putrefied as a result of eating of the Eitz Hadas, every aspect of creation became diminished due to that ingestion of the Ra of the Eitz Hadas. That's the understanding. Avram Avinu now his descendants are going to be the Adam. Adam lost this classification of Adam in terms of advancing spirituality. Avram's descendants assumed that profile of Adam. Atem kruim Adam, hem lo kruim Adam. To be able to function in the capacity of Adam, Hashem had to create a new creation. It couldn't be part of that original creation that was putrefied or impacted as negatively by the Eitz Hadas. That was Adam's creation. So therefore, Avram Avinu was the equivalent of a new creation. He was the beginning of a new creation. And the Maral points out that when we find by the beginning of creation, it says, Bihi Borom. It says, when God, he created them. So the Midrash says, He Borom, Osios Avraham. If you reconjugate the letters of Bihi Borom, the letters spell Avraham. So the Maral of Prague tells us in the Gurus Hashem that Avram was the beginning of a new creation. Although physically he was the same human being, but in terms of his dimension of value, he was the equivalent of a new creation when he became Avraham. And the reason why is because he had to be the one to counter the evil of whatever that evil was. Avraham is the representation of good in the world, and the descendants of Adam, which were putrefied and impacted by the evil, they are the representation of the negative. So the balance of existence is Avram's descendants, meaning Kibi Yitzchok Ikor Hozora, which is Yaakov's children, counter the whole world. That's the balance. That's the counterbalance. If you take a look in the Midrash Tanchuma, before Avram went into the kiln, Hashem said to Avram, if you go into the kiln and you give your life to sanctify my name, you will be like a permanent structure made of silver. You'll be tiras kesef, which means if you engrave something in silver, that engraving stays. It doesn't become smudged. And therefore you become permanent and you'll be forever. But if you don't go into the kiln, it's like writing something on a plank of wood with ink, but over time it becomes smudged because it's not etched into the material. Like when you grave in silver, Avram says, I will go into the kiln and I will be like a wall that repels all attacks. That's what Hashem says. That's what Avram says to Hashem. I'm going into the kiln. I will die to sanctify your name. That's what he says to Hashem. And he went to the kiln and he came out. So if you read the Vayevorach David, Atu Hashem Elokim Hashem Elchartem Avram, you chose Avram to be the destiny of existence, to counter all evil, to be the representation of good. The Sabta Shmo Avraham. And why does he have that level of representation, ability to counter all evil? Because Sabta Shmo Avraham. Because he went into the kiln and gave his life for you to sanctify your name, therefore Sabta Shmo Avraham. Therefore, ultimately, he merited to be a new creation. What follows right afterwards? V'chorosima bris. Hashem entered into a covenant. Lo seis lo es eretz haKnani achiti amori aprizi. The land of Canaan of the nations, all these nations are the representation of evil. It was only because with Samta Shema Avraham, now you have the wherewithal, because now you Avraham, the representation of good, therefore it's Chorisum Abris. Now he's able to counter the evil, to destroy it, and that's why when we conquered the land, what was the objective? We had to remove all the nations of Canaan. There should not be a trace of them. They had to be destroyed. So when we went in, we didn't do it. We didn't destroy them fully. Therefore, it always came to haunt us. There was always traces of that evil. We didn't expunge it fully. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying here, if I would ever know the error, allow me to go across the Jordan and remove those nations. Because if I remove those nations, the Jews will never be exiled. Why? Because when I remove them, there won't be a trace of that evil that it should come back to fester and haunt them. I will remove them for good. But since Yoshua was not on the level of Moshe, he wasn't able to totally extract that representation of the evil from the land. As a result of that, it affected us negatively, and ultimately we were exiled, and therefore the Golas came eventually. But Moshe says, if I'd go in, ever know, if I would remove them, the Jews will never be exiled, because the level of purification of the land will be at such a level, it will never ever affect the Jews being there negatively. But Yoshua, because he wasn't able to extract and do traces of what they represented, as a result of that, we failed again in the future. We find Moshe says, ever note the error that Moshe says, because of my Ayin Tovah, my bracha will take on a special level, special status. We find two things. The Torah tells us that when Yitzchak believed he was near death, he summoned Esav to bring him delicacy so he should be able to give a bracha before he passes away. Rivka immediately informs Yaakov that it's important that he goes immediately to receive the birthright, and she prepares delicacies as her husband likes, and Yaakov goes and he impersonates Esav. She takes the hides of the goats, puts it on his chest, on his arms, because she knew that Yitzchak would touch him to see if it's Esav, and then he would give him the bracha. At that time, Yitzchak already suffered from macular degeneration. He couldn't see clearly. Visually, he couldn't see. And the Torah tells us that when Yaakov came and he believed he was the one who was going to be the recipient of the bracha, it says he felt him, he embraced him, and he kissed him. He needed that physical contact. Yitzchak at that moment couldn't see. Visually, he could not see Yaakov. He could not see, he was not able to see the recipient of the bracha. So visually, that level of contact, to be able to sense that person, he wasn't able to. So he had to compensate by hugging him and kissing him. And only then does the bracha take on that special level. Where do we find something similar? Yosef was told that his father is not well. He immediately takes his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, to receive a bracha, because he realizes he's nearing his end, to receive a bracha. When Ephraim and Manasseh come to Yaakov, what does he do? Again, Yaakov was visually impaired. Yaakov cannot see clearly. He goes and he embraces them and he kisses his grandchildren. He physically attaches himself to them, that he feels their being. And only after he feels their being, then he gives them the bracha. And he says, I never believed I even would see you ever again. Not only do I see you, I see your grandchildren. So that feeling of attachment was actually activated so that bracha should have the most effective level. Again, the reason why he had to have all this physical involvement, the kissing, the hugging, and the feeling, was because since Yitzchak and Yaakov, both of them, when they gave the bracha, they were both visually impaired. Therefore, to compensate for that, they had to be involved, physical, attachment, the hugging and the kissing. But if a person sees and you see, the seeing immediately creates the attachment. We say he's an attractive person. What attracts? The eye attracts. When you see something, it's attractive. But if God forbid a person can't see, that attachment, that attraction is not there. Therefore, it has to be compensated. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah makes it a point. Even though he passed away, he was 120 years old the day that he was born. Lo noslecho lo kos einoso. Lo kos eino. His vitality didn't wane. His eyesight was perfect. The Torah makes it a point. Lo kos eino. His eyesight did not weaken. So when Moshe Rabbeinu would go see that land, let me see it. Because the Ayin Tovah Moshe, the way he saw him, nobody saw the way he saw him. It's in the positive vein. It's his level of attachment. What he would want for them or wishes them is one of a level. And therefore he says, if my Ayin Tovah would see the land, the bracha would be unlimited bracha. That's the reason why. So the reason why it's to go across has nothing to do with himself. It's purely for the sake of Klal Yisrael that they should never go into Golus, because the nations will be ruled never to come back. And my eye is one of a kind, therefore the blessing and the success will be one of a level of success.